Good evening. Welcome to the Judicial Forum for the Illinois Supreme Court and the Illinois Appellate Court, sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Jackson County. My name is Winona Whitfield. I am the moderator for this forum. Before I begin with introductions and questions to the candidates, there are some matters I wish to mention. First, the forum is divided into two parts. In part one, we will have comments from Justice Judy Cates, the Democratic candidate for the Supreme Court of Illinois, and Justice David Overstreet, the Republican candidate for the Supreme Court of Illinois. That portion of the program will last approximately 40 minutes. Immediately following the first forum, we will hear comments and answers to questions posed to Justice Mark Bowie and Judge Sarah Smith. Justice Bowie is the Republican candidate for the Illinois Appellate Court 5th District. Judge Smith is the Democratic candidate for the Illinois Appellate Court 5th District. And the second portion of the forum will also last approximately 40 minutes. The planned format of the forum is as follows. Following their opening statements, I will ask each of the candidates questions rotating the order. Each candidate will have approximately 1.5 minutes to respond to the question. I will end questions in this part one at approximately 7:05 or 7:10 to allow candidates time for their respective closing arguments or closing statements, sorry. This same format will be followed for the candidates for the Illinois Appellate Court 5th District. And I expect closing statements in that forum will take place at approximately 7 p.m. You should note that the forum will be live streamed on the Carbondale Public Library website, and a recording of the forum will be available on YouTube later, and a link to the forum can be found on the League of Women Voters website. With that introduction, we will begin with the opening statement by Justice Cates.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters of Jackson County for having this forum for all of us candidates. COVID has suppressed the ability of candidates, not just judicial candidates, but all candidates, to have a frank discussion. So I'm happy to be here this evening. I was elected to the 5th District Appellate Court in 2012. And since that time, I've been representing the people of Southern Illinois, which comprises the 37 counties in Southern Illinois, south of Springfield. I'm running for the Illinois Supreme Court because I want to make a change in the court. I believe there needs to be more transparency, and we need to eliminate waste in the court. We also need to bring the court up to the 2020 standards that we've now had to comply with because of the pandemic. So there's a lot of reasons to run for this position. I also want to appoint judges who are diverse. We have had approximately 44 judges appointed while Justice Carmeier has been in office. Only 6 have been women, and there have been no diverse people of color in this selection process. So we need a change, and that's why I'm running. I was raised in Belleville, Illinois, and I went to the public high school there, and then I attended Cornell University. Attending Cornell was quite an honor, but very expensive. And when I got there, my dad, who was a small town businessman, started going under because the mall, the big box stores, had come to town. My mom was a teacher, but my check bounced at Cornell. So you go to work. And that's what I did. In those days, on 1970 to 73, it was cheaper to go to school if you went in the summertime. So I did, and I was able to complete college in 3 years. I moved back to Belleville to attend the Washington University School of Law. And again, my husband, I got married just before law school. I'll add more later. Thank you.
Thank you. Justice Overstreet, your opening statement.
Thank you, Professor Whitfield and the League of Women Voters of Jackson County for hosting this forum. It's good to be back with you. My name's David Overstreet. I'm the husband of Suzanne. We've been married 27 years and we've raised 3 children. We've got a daughter that's 24, a son that's 22, and our youngest son turned 14 today. I am the son of Jack and Ann Overstreet. I grew up in Mount Vernon, Illinois. Attended school all the way through high school there. And from my mom and dad, I learned the value of service to the community, to our church, to the youth, and how to treat people right. And they provide a great example for me and provide an opportunity for me to be raised and attend college at David Lipscomb in Nashville, Tennessee, law school at the University of Tennessee. And then I chose, again, to practice law in a couple of places, and then came back to Mount Vernon, Illinois, convinced my wife, Suzanne, to come to Southern Illinois with me. Had a vast civil practice, bench practice with like a small town lawyer, every type of civil case one can imagine in those years. And after practicing for over 15 years, I was assigned or appointed to the Circuit Court of the Second Circuit. Served as a circuit judge for 10 years, handled every type of docket imaginable in a rural circuit in Southern Illinois, and then was assigned to the appellate court 3.5 years ago, and was elected by the voters in 2018. I've been privileged to be elected by the voters in the Second Circuit as a circuit judge in 2008, retained in 2014, and then elected to the appellate court in 2018. And I've always tried to be a judge that was fair and impartial, showed good temperament, and treated people right. And I appreciate the opportunity to serve in these other levels. And I would be honored to be your representative on the Illinois Supreme Court.
Thank you. Justice Overstreet, I'll continue with you. Most citizens know very little about the Supreme Court of Illinois. What should they know about the court? And in assessing your candidacy, what should they consider?
Well, I think it's important to understand how the flow of work goes through our courts. Cases originate in our county courthouses in the southern 37 counties of Illinois at the circuit court level. This is critical because this is where judges get a chance to see the parties before them, hear the evidence, hear the testimony. This gives judges a great opportunity to dig deep into what's happening in each individual case. And our circuit judges, which I, again, served for 10 years, handle heavy dockets and they make decisions affecting parties' lives every day of the week. And I was able to do that. Our appellate court reviews these cases to determine whether or not the judge exercised his or her discretion or applied the law in the correct manner. We are not the triers of fact. That's for the trial court. But when a mistake has been made in the application of law or discretion has been abused, it's our job as appellate courts to reverse and or remand these cases. That's what the Supreme Court does as well. They handle a smaller percentage of cases compared with the appellate courts and the circuit courts. They handle the cases that are the most important in the state to clarify the law when there's a difference in the district's opinions. But I believe a justice's personal temperament and trustworthiness is a key to being successful to serving as a judge at any level, including the Illinois Supreme Court.
Thank you. Justice Cates, would you like me to repeat the question? Justice Cates?
Okay. I'm going to begin with the second part of the question, which is what should the voters consider? And that is experience. As I was saying, I went to the Washington University School of Law. I graduated from there and I became a prosecutor. I was a prosecutor for 4 years. No candidate in this race has been a prosecutor, and I was there for 4 years. I tried the rapes and the murders and put the child molesters away, and you cannot understand humanity unless you hear about that. Contrary to Justice Overstreet's experience, I did try every type of case, from the most serious kind of case to the others. And then I went into civil practice, and I was in civil practice for 30 years. Mount Vernon doesn't have a very diverse lawsuit docket, but I tried cases in every court in Southern Illinois. So experience, knowing people, how they react. Being a judge is not on the job experience. You don't learn anything about people when you're sitting on the other side of the bench. The voters need to know that the experience is the most important key, as well as the integrity and honor of the bench. So I went to the other side of the bench in 2012, and I've been privileged to be writing the law based on my experience since that time.
Thank you, Justice Cates. I'll continue with you with the next question. Many states, perhaps a majority, use nonpartisan elections or gubernatorial appointments as methods of selecting judges, particularly the Supreme Court and Appellate Court judges. Should Illinois keep the system it has of electing Supreme Court justices, or shift to a nonpartisan method of electing or appointing judges? And if not, why not?
You know, I'm very glad that you asked this, because this calls for an opinion. And I am an advocate of judges going on these kinds of programs and giving an opinion, so long as you don't commit to an opinion that would decide a case that may come before you. This one won't. It's a matter of the legislature. But, you know, we do live right next to Missouri, and Missouri is famous for the Missouri Plan, which is the nomination of judges. To answer your question, if I could do anything in a judicial race, it would be to run as nonpartisan. Everyone in Southern Illinois says, are you a Democrat or are you Republican? I say I'm neither. The law is tilted so that we have to run as one or the other. So I am a Democrat, but I have no label, because I'm a Democrat with guns. And people say they're Democrats are going to take your guns. I'm very pro Second Amendment. I own guns. My kids own guns. My husband's a hunter. We're an outdoor family. I have a FOID card. So what does that make me? And when someone walks into the courtroom, I don't ask them what their label is. I want the playing field level, so that everybody who comes before me has the same opportunity to have a judge that's fair and act with integrity. Thank you.
Thank you. Justice Overstreet, I'll ask you the same question. Should Illinois keep the system it has of electing Supreme Court justices, or shift to a nonpartisan or method of electing or appointing judges? And if not, why not?
Well, having run in 3 races now for the circuit court, the appellate court, and now the Supreme Court, I really believe the ideal situation would be to have a nonpartisan election. I think it is important for voters to have a chance, a voice in who is going to serve on the Illinois Supreme Court. I believe there is benefit to getting out and meeting people and talking to them. And, you know, this is a different era with COVID, but still, I think there are benefits for our judges to get out and be with the people from all over, all 37 counties. However, and even though I've been the favorable recipient of 2 elections up to this point, general elections, I believe that, you know, there can be a lot of nonsense, a lot of things that we as judges, you know, we adhere to a different standard code of ethics than other candidates. And I just think it would be better if, you know, we were in elections, but selected nonpartisan without party label.
Thank you. Justice Overstreet, I'll continue with you with the next question. As a Supreme Court justice, you will have the opportunity to make appointments to various boards and commissions, as well as the opportunity to fill judicial vacancies. What criteria will you use in making these appointments? And as a part of that question, should diversity of the board or commission or the bench be a factor you would weigh in making such appointments?
The answer is, to the criteria, I want to pick the most qualified people to serve, whether it's on the courts or on a board or a commission. And yes, I believe diversity is important in the service in our courts, on our boards, and on our commissions. And that is a factor, and it is an important factor. But I believe that, using, for example, a committee to help select judges and circuit judges is important, and I would continue with that tradition. But while diversity is something we need to continue to strive towards and improve on, I believe we need to do a better job of recruiting potential lawyers. And I try to do that personally through my involvement in the community with kids, with camps and sports, and through being an advisor, judicial advisor of Illinois Youth in Government, and also through my activities on Inns of Court, encouraging law students. And so it starts young with our kids, with our law students, and we definitely need a more diverse body of people serving in various capacities.
Thank you. Justice Cates, I'll continue with you asking the same question. What criteria will you use in making appointments to various boards and commissions, as well as filling judicial vacancies? Should diversity of the board or commission or the bench be a factor that you would weigh in making such appointments?
Well, I agree that I want to select the most qualified individual, but the question is, how do you define that term qualified? My opponent didn't define that. The term needs to be defined by experience. What have they done? What is their life story? What is their connection with people? Are they veterans? Have they gone and faced the enemy for us so that we can have the freedoms that we enjoy in this country? Those kinds of factors go into the selection of a judge, not just some broad sweeping term, I want the most qualified. That's not the answer to the question. So we want the most qualified, but yes, I'm going to look at their life story. And then, should diversity be a factor on the committee? Well, my opponent was on a program last week saying that it's working just fine. And so he would continue Justice Carmeier's program committee process. The problem with that process is it's only produced, out of 44 appointments, 6 women, which women represent 52% of the population, and no people of color. So I need community leaders on the committee, not just lawyers. We need a change. Thank you.
Thank you. Justice Cates, I'll continue with you with the next question. Running for office is an expensive undertaking. Would having received campaign contributions ever cause you to recuse yourself from a case? And if so, when? How can the public be assured that rulings are not influenced by campaign contributions?
Your first part of your question is the campaign contributions and would I recuse myself? Yes, I would. Contrary to what Justice Carmeier did in the most recent case against a big insurance company that ultimately paid $250 million to keep him off the witness stand, I would recuse myself. And in fact, We already have made standards in this race for contributions internally in my office, where we are looking at contributors, and if there is a threshold contribution, I recuse myself now in this race. How can I assure the public? I can't assure the public. What the public has to do is meet all of the candidates and hear their views on money. You talk about no nonsense. My opponent just talked about a lot of nonsense that goes on in these campaigns. Well, that's generated by money. In fact, we recently had a flyer from the Illinois Republican Party where my opponent's name is actually on the flyer. And they say Democrats are going to suppress religion. They're going to legalize methamphetamines. They're going to abolish coal. They're going to have sanctuary cities for criminals. These are the kinds of tactics that cause people not to pay attention to a race. So I can assure the people that I can't be bought. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Overstreet. I'll ask you the same question. Would having received campaign contributions ever cause you to recuse yourself from a case? If so, when? And the second part of the question is, how can the public be assured that rulings are not influenced by campaign contributions?
Thank you, Professor. There is a rule governing this for judicial candidates and for judges, and rightly so. We as judicial candidates are forbidden from directly soliciting donations or accepting donations. We have committees that do that. I have a group, just like Justice Cates has a group that solicits those funds. I have no idea who contributes to my campaign or the amount they contribute. So, contributions aside, and I'll address this a little bit more here, I recuse myself in any case where there's a conflict or appearance of conflict or impropriety. If the system is working properly, and I believe it does and can, the public can be assured that rulings are not influenced by contributions because the judicial candidates, again, do not directly solicit. I have no knowledge who is contributing, but I can receive motions that tell me that and then make a proper recusal just like I would in any other case. The case Caperton versus A.T. Massey Coal Company from the United States Supreme Court in 2009 set out the standard. When there's a probability of actual bias on the part of the judge or decision maker is too high to be constitutionally tolerable, then the judge should recuse himself or herself. The inquiry centers on the contribution's relative size in comparison to the total amount of money contributed to the campaign, the total amount spent in the election, and the apparent effects such contribution had on the outcome of the election. And I will abide by that U.S. Supreme Court ruling.
Thank you, Justice Overstreet. I'll continue with you with the next question. What reforms to the criminal justice system or the civil justice system would you like to see?
I think I'd like to talk about civil first, and maybe I'll get into the criminal. But in the civil realm, I am a proponent of the Illinois State Bar Association initiative, the Rural Practice Initiative, started by the president, this year's president, Dennis Orsi. This problem of having a lack of attorneys to serve counties in our district where the population is, again, less populated areas, is a great need. In fact, I've heard this on the campaign trail the entire time since, I announced in November. I've had several people bring this up to me. And so I think it's an excellent initiative and something that, no matter what happens in this race, that I want to be a proponent of, a champion of. Right now, there's a committee that has law professors on it, as well as attorneys from throughout the state. And I know Dennis Orsi wants recommendations and actions to start now, this year, during his term. There's an aging population of lawyers in several counties and no one to hand off to. So we need to take advantage of these excellent mentors, to have succession plans where people in, again, the less populated areas have attorneys. And it may even be where 3 counties come together, but we've got to improve this. I've heard this from the citizens, not just from lawyers. And I think this rural practice initiative has promise, and I look forward to being a champion of it.
Thank you. Justice Cates, what reforms to the civil justice system or the criminal justice system would you like to see?
Well, I too will begin with the civil, just in order to follow up. You notice that Justice Overstreet didn't mention the program that's presently going on in the Illinois Supreme Court to give people access to justice. That's what it's called. We have in the Illinois Supreme Court a committee that has been going on for years trying to get people access to justice who are unrepresented litigants. I'm on the subcommittee, the working subcommittee, to get unrepresented appellate litigants access to the courts. And I'm going to be doing a webinar and teaching that program. But we also have other access to justice committees and forms that are being developed and that have been developed and approved by the Illinois Supreme Court. As far as the criminal reforms, in 2017, the Illinois Supreme Court did a study on inherent bias in the judicial system and found that indeed there was judicial bias. Yet there's been no training for judges on this program. And indeed, I can't even get access to this study, despite the fact that taxpayer money was spent on it. And that's because the Supreme Court doesn't believe that they're subject to the Freedom of Information Act. So I would like to see that study and then determine how we can eliminate bias from the criminal courts.
Thank you, Justice Cates. I'll continue with you with the next question. Are there ethics reforms you believe are needed for judges? If so, what are they? And if not, why are none needed?
Well, we need ethics reforms. We surely do. I mean, when you look at the flyer that went out to Franklin County, any judge who would put his or her name on this flyer, it is a stain on the judiciary, in my opinion. But the ethics reforms that we need, instead of having broad categorical rules about, well, you can recuse yourself when and if you think, the judge thinks that it's a problem, I think is wrong. I think we need better criteria for when a judge has a conflict of interest. So that's first of all. With regard to waste, I think we have an obligation as judges to eliminate waste in the judiciary. And I'll give you an example. We have 3 different webinar platforms, I learned, not because of anything except the pandemic. We have WebinX as the Supreme Court, we have Teams, and we have Zoom. Why is that? I have no idea. And I didn't know it until there was a pandemic. But we certainly weren't moving toward the 20th century until the pandemic hit. But now we're using Zoom. Our oral argument court is open, and I have many more reforms for another day once I'm elected. Thank you.
Thank you. Justice Overstreet, that question is for you. Are there ethics reforms you believe that are needed for judges? And if so, what are they? If not, why are none needed?
I think our judicial code of ethics is effective and excellent, and I follow the current canons of judicial ethics. And I think that's what we need to do, is follow the canons. The underlying purpose is to encourage faith and trust in the judicial system and in our judges. And as it relates to this flyer that my opponent has mentioned, this was one county out of 37 that included me that I did not approve, was not asked if I approved, but my name was included. And they put out a flyer that was a little bit over the top. And I disavow it. I didn't approve it. And I've told people that, I'm not happy with it. But on the other hand, I'm, as a judicial candidate, I'm not going to grandstand, and I'm not going to get on Channel 12 News and get mixed up in local politics at the county level. I think judges, we need to do better. And for these accusations against me to come without anyone even asking me, I think is unfortunate, because I'm against nonsense in politics. I'm for trying to improve the trust and faith the public has in our judiciary, and by making wild accusations against opponents, I do not think that follows the spirit, in any event, of our judicial canon of ethics.
Thank you, Justice Overstreet. Next question. What has been your greatest accomplishment in your legal career?
Serving as a circuit judge in the juvenile docket in Jefferson County. Every Monday afternoon for probably 9 of the 10 years I served as a circuit judge, I handled abuse and neglect cases, and during part of that time also delinquency cases. But it was the most challenging part of my week, and the most challenging thing I've done as a judge on a week in, week out basis, to hear what's happened to these. You talk about being in the trenches, to hear what's happening to these children, these unfortunate circumstances, and making decisions about who these children were going to be raised by, cared by, whether it's a parent or some other body. These are the most heartbreaking decisions to make. However, it was the one area I felt like I could make the most difference as a judge. And they weren't all success stories, but when they were success stories, it was something that I felt really good about. And that really is the proudest part of my legal career, and probably will remain so no matter what happens.
Thank you, Justice Overstreet. Justice Cates, what has been your greatest accomplishment in your legal career?
I have been so blessed with a practice of over 40 years that it's very difficult to pick one. As I've already said before, and I'm not somebody who makes wild accusations, but as I said before, as prosecutor, I tried to keep our neighborhoods safe. That meant putting rapists and child abusers in jail, keeping them in jail for long periods of time. And I'm talking about the worst of humanity. I didn't do it one day a week. I did it every day for 4 years. I put rapists in jail, murderers in jail, not one day a week. And I was the one talking to the families. I wasn't sitting up on a bench watching. I was in the trenches. With regard to my civil practice of 30 years, I helped families. The man who lost a hand in a punch press, the railroader who lost a leg on the job, a man who was working on a barge, got hurt seriously. Those are the young man who died on a farm accident. Those are the people I represented. You can't do that from up high. You got to represent the people of Southern Illinois, and that was my greatest accomplishment. Thank you.
Justice Cates, I'll continue with you. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, the courts have made a number of changes in operations. Has anything been learned from these changes that might lead to permanent changes?
Well, I want to commend our court, because when our court got closed, our appellate court, I went to 2 of the sitting justices who were on a panel with me in April of 2020. And I asked those 2 judges, would they be willing to do a Zoom argument and open the court slightly? And they did. My opponent was not one of those, but the two gentlemen that I'm the only woman left on the court, but the 2 gentlemen that were involved had really no experience with this kind of platform. Then the Supreme Court followed, and they were live streaming. And I'm a little disappointed that we're not fully open. But to answer your question, yes. In fact, the Illinois Supreme Court has passed a few new rules that will allow video conferencing to occur for non-testimonial matters. They passed Rule 45 so that we won't go back to the way it used to be. And that's very helpful to the self-represented litigant, for example, the woman who has to find a babysitter for her child because she got sued on a small credit card bill. So no longer does that person have to show up in court, but can simply call in and say, Judge, I'm here. I want to respond. Please, let's proceed. So I don't think we're going back. I hope we're not going back. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Overstreet. I will repeat the question. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, the courts have made a number of changes in operations. Has anything been learned from these changes that might lead to permanent changes?
Absolutely. And we were headed in that direction in the courts, but COVID has sped things up. You know, we're fortunate that in 2017, e-filing was adopted by our courts. There was a leap in technology. It allowed our courts to continue to appropriately operate in this time of changing world of unknown safety. But COVID has been a catalyst. Our judges, our attorneys, the staff in the courthouses have worked many hours to make the online Zoom calls and conferences work. Although I prefer in person, but it's worked on the appellate court level and in talking to circuit judges and lawyers. They've made it work. And I tip my hat because of the high volume that circuit judges and circuit clerks deal with and the attorneys deal with. But there are going to be changes because now money can be saved for status conferences, case management conferences, save clients money, save attorneys travel. When there's inclement weather, cases can be heard now that could not have been heard before, whether it's the circuit court level or the appellate court level. So, this remote appearances was part of the judicial, the strategic agenda, which was adopted recently, but COVID has sped it up, and the world has changed, and in some ways for the better, because we've been forced to use technology to a greater degree than we have in the past.
Thank you, Justice Overstreet. I will continue. I think we've got time for one last question before your closing statement. And that question is, do judges have any role in bringing important legal or judicial issues before the public or the legislature? And if so, what is that role?
Thank you, Professor. Yes, certainly the Supreme Court creates the Supreme Court rules that are intended to clarify and guide litigants in courts through the judicial process. And if important legal or judicial issues arise, then the Supreme Court jumps in, just as was referenced earlier here with COVID, to enact new rules and to clarify these issues for the attorneys and for judges that are in the circuit court level. Again, it was pointed out that the video capabilities for litigants, rules have been changed due to COVID, and that really is, in my opinion, the primary role for the Supreme Court is to govern the processes and the rules for the parties throughout. I'm not running for the state house or the state senate as running for the Supreme Court, and so there are committees through the ISBA who actually make proposals for changes in substantive areas of the law, and so there is a role for legal professionals, people with legal concerns, but I think the Supreme Court's main role in all of this is to implement Supreme Court rules which are appropriate and guide litigants through the process.
Thank you, Justice Overstreet. Justice Cates, can you respond to that question?
Yes, Professor. Justice Overstreet's response represents what I want the people watching this to understand, and that is there's a huge difference between us. Justice Overstreet did not even mention the fact that the Supreme Court every year files an annual report. And that's because the Supreme Court does many more things than just decide a case. As you said, they select judges, but they also have a very large budget that also controls the probation department. The Supreme Court tells the legislature and the public what has gone on during the year, every year. And there's a section in the 2017 annual report to the legislature that says, these are the cases we decided that we think you, the legislature, need to look at. So in addition to the rules, the Chief Justice of the Illinois Supreme Court does appear in front of the legislature and does lobby for change, a change in budget, for example, pointing out cases that might have conflicted with a statute that perhaps got declared unconstitutional. We are not lobbyists as Supreme Court justices, but there's a lot more to the Supreme Court than just passing a rule. And those rules, by the way, are created by committees that justices pick. So there's a big difference. Thank you.
Thank you. It is now time for closing statements, and Justice Cates, you began with the first closing statement. So this time I'll begin with Justice Overstreet and ask for your closing statement.
Thank you, Professor. I've been honored to serve the people of Southern Illinois in my legal career now for many years. I practiced law in a small town where I've represented families and individuals in every type of civil matter imaginable. And yes, my experience as a circuit judge, I believe, is paramount. Those 10 years, I wasn't just sitting high on a bench. If you've ever been to juvenile court, you know that the judges talk to the families, to the social workers, to the kids. So to act like I was just sitting on high is just an inaccurate representation. The people who worked with me when I was a circuit judge, including in the juvenile court, I hear them time and time say, we miss you, Judge Overstreet. You cared, you applied the law, you were fair. And I'm so honored to have served the people in Southern Illinois, both as a lawyer and as a judge, and to be the kind of judge that has the temperament needed to perform the job as a Supreme Court justice. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Justice Cates.
Okay. I will be a Supreme Court justice who stands up for the rights of everyone, all the people. My experience is not only on the bench since 2012, since I've been an appellate court justice, but it's been in front of the bench in every kind of case in the federal courts, which my opponent did not practice in. I've written articles, which my opponent hasn't done. I've taught law, which my opponent hasn't done. And I've tried very complex litigation cases. Experience, integrity, fairness, level of the playing field. I have shown my ability to do that. And as far as community service, which we haven't talked about today, I have been on two school boards, helped lead a referendum to build a school board. And I hope my mom is proud of me and my dad, who raised a woman to be strong and who could do anything she set her mind to do. So thank you for this forum. I promise the people of Southern Illinois that I will not let you down. I have not done that in the 40 years I've been practicing. So thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Jackson County, I wish to thank Justice Cates and Justice Overstreet for their participation in this forum. We will take a 1-minute break and then begin the second half of the forum with Justice Bowie and Judge Smith giving their opening remarks. This is Winona, just testing to see if you can hear.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
I liked her better when she was muted.
All right, Mark. Okay, thank you guys. I appreciate it. It just went out the very last second, so I'm glad I'm back on.
You doing okay, Sarah?
I am. How about you?
I'm doing good. Glad to hear.
Good. Good.
I believe we're ready to begin. Welcome to part 2 of the Judicial Forum sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Jackson County. My name is Winona Whitfield, and I am the moderator for this forum. I am joined in this forum by Justice Mark Bowie and Judge Sarah Smith. Justice Bowie is the Republican candidate for the Illinois Appellate Court, 5th District. Judge Smith is the Democratic candidate for the Illinois Appellate Court, 5th District. And we'll begin with opening statements. I'll begin with Judge Bowie.
Thank you, Professor. Good evening. And I would like to thank the Jackson County chapter of the League of Women Voters for hosting this event for us tonight. It is difficult for us to get out and meet people. I'm Mark Bowie. I'm your Republican nominee for the vacancy of the Honorable Melissa Chapman on the Appellate Court. My wife, Emily, and I live here in nearby Ann, Illinois. She teaches physical education and elementary and driver's education in Cobden, Illinois. We have 3 children, Nicholas, who's 20, Kaylin, who's 19, and Peyton, who's 17. I was elected the resident circuit judge here in Union County in 2000, and I was retained to that position in 2006, 2012, and 2018. During those 18 years, I presided over all the various dockets and heard all the cases throughout the first judicial circuit. As presiding judge, I oversaw the judicial system and administrative duties, and I am honored and was fortunate enough that on May 1st of 2019, I was assigned to the 5th District Appellate Court by Justice Lloyd Carmeier and the Illinois Supreme Court. Since then, I've heard the various appeals that I'm assigned to. I've authored opinions and conducted the administrative duties of the office on a daily basis. I believe that my extensive experience as both a circuit and appellate court judge provides me with the legal experience necessary to serve on the appellate court. I'm a lifelong resident of Southern Illinois, and I believe that my personal upbringing and background has taught me integrity, fairness, and to possess the proper demeanor that is needed to serve on the bench. And I believe those personal traits have been honed and expanded during my experience as a judge at both the circuit and the appellate court level. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Bowie. Judge Smith, your opening statement.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. And I want to also thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this. And I also want to thank the voters online for watching this. It's not too often people are interested in judicial races because we're all the way at the bottom of the ballot, but I think we've seen how important these races can be. So I am a judge in Madison County, lifelong resident of Southern Illinois as well. I grew up in a small farming community in Morrow, where I grew up in a working class family. My dad put me to work, have a paper route right at the age of 9, and then I tasseled corn all the way up to high school. I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, but my dad pretty much said, you better find a way to pay for it. So right out of high school, I enlisted as a mechanic in the United States Army. And I served there in the motor pool where I put myself through undergrad and law school. And then after I passed the bar exam, I was commissioned as a JAG officer. I am currently a colonel in the Illinois Army National Guard, the highest ranking JAG in the Illinois Army National Guard, a 2-time combat veteran, and the first military judge in the state of Illinois. I am married to my husband, who actually yesterday just deployed for his 4th combat tour, and we have 3 little boys. I am running for this position because when it was announced that Justice Chapman retired, no one from the Democratic Party was interested in running for this position. They thought it was too difficult to do, that it was too conservative in an area and that no Democrat could win. And my upbringing and in the military as a public servant, I stepped up. I stepped up because I believe people should have a choice in who they have serving them on the appellate court. I believe that my extensive litigation experience, I was a prosecutor and a civil litigator for 15 years before I was appointed associate judge. As an associate judge and circuit judge, I've handled all of the cases that have come through our courthouse, and I'm ready to be your public servant and bring my hard work ethic to the appellate court. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll stick with you, Judge Smith. Most citizens know very little about the Illinois Appellate Court. What should they know about the court? And in assessing your candidacy, what should they consider?
Absolutely. And as I mentioned, not a lot of folks do know much about judges until, unfortunately, they pay attention once they need one. What people should know about the appellate court is, unlike the Supreme Court, where we often see that that's the court of last resort, in Illinois, truly the appellate court is where most cases land. And by the time that an individual takes their case to the appellate court and appeals the circuit court's decisions, they have spent tens of thousands of dollars really fighting for their cause. And so it's at that level where they make the decisions of whether or not the trial court got the decision and made the correct decision. And so that's why it's important. It's important for you to have individuals who've not only been on the bench, but have also appeared in front of the bench, representing individuals and representing cases. And I believe that's the experience that I bring to the appellate court. So it's a very important court because truly almost all of the cases, very few actually get appealed and heard before the Supreme Court. Thank you.
Justice Bowie, I'll ask you the same question. What should citizens know about the Illinois Appellate Court, and what should they know in assessing your candidacy? What should they consider?
Well, I hate to sound like a broken record with Judge Smith there, but she is exactly right. Every citizen who comes out of the trial court has the right to appeal any case to the appellate court. The vast majority of those cases that are appealed end with that appellate court ruling, and only a very small percentage are allowed to be heard by the Supreme Court. So she is exactly right. Really, those cases end at the appellate court level. So my opinion is that the justices who hear these appeals at the appellate court level should have a diverse background in their judicial experience. And after hearing the civil cases and the criminal cases, family cases, all the different types of cases after 18 and a half years on the circuit court, and now even with about a year and a half under my belt on the appellate court, I believe that I do have that necessary experience, the necessary qualifications, and I believe I have proven myself to possess the personal and legal traits necessary to continue on an elected position on the appellate court.
Thank you. Next question, Justice Bowie, I'll continue with you. Many states, I think a majority, use nonpartisan elections or gubernatorial appointments as methods of selecting appellate and Supreme Court judges. Should Illinois keep the system it has of electing appellate court judges, or shift to a nonpartisan method of electing or appointment of judges? And if not, why not?
Well, obviously, as a judge who has won an election, I'm a little partial to the election process. There are no doubt pros and cons for both sides of that argument. I believe that when you have the partisan elections, that allows the voters to talk to the candidates, look at their background, and see what basic principles those candidates are aligned with. And if a person doesn't align themselves with a particular party, they're able to run as an independent. So there are alternatives. I believe that the citizens in a particular area where the candidates are running should be the ones to make that decision on who they want, the citizens, who they want as their judicial representative rather than a committee the governor, or any other governmental agency. Now, I know I accepted the assigned position from Justice Carmeier. However, and I appreciate that, and I'm happy to serve in that capacity. But that is one of the reasons I am running, is to allow the citizens of Southern Illinois to decide if I deserve, based on my experience and qualifications, to an elected position on the appellate court.
Thank you. Judge Smith, I'll ask you the same question. Should Illinois keep the system it has of electing appellate court judges, or shift to a nonpartisan method of electing or appointment of judges? And if not, why not?
Thank you, Professor. So to answer the second question first, I absolutely do believe, and this is part of the reason why I'm running, is that people should elect the individuals who are on the bench. So as far as the appointments go, no, I do not believe that we should go to an appointment type election for the appellate court. However, what I would disagree with Justice Bowie on is that I absolutely believe that any judicial race, Illinois is one of the few that has partisan races for their judges. And as we have seen nationally, what politics has done and partisan politics has done at the national level, that doesn't belong in our courtroom. For me, my political opinions, whether I agree with a law or I don't agree with a law, have no place in the courtroom. And so I do believe that the races should be nonpartisan. And to address what Justice Bowie indicated as far as being you having a choice, I looked into running as an independent, as a matter of fact, and it took 50 times the amount of signatures to run as an independent in Illinois courts than running as a Democrat. Where a Democrat, it took me 500 signatures to run as an independent, which is what I believe all judges should be, because politics has no place in the courtroom. It took 250,000 signatures, which is nearly impossible to get. So I do agree that they should be nonpartisan races, but I do believe they should be elected. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge Smith, I'll continue with you. Appellate justices serve on many statewide committees by appointment. Do you have a preference for where you would like to serve in regard to these committees, in regard to these administrative matters, in order to improve the legal system?
Absolutely. Two of the committees that I would like to serve on would be access to the courts. That's something that I've been passionate about here in Madison County. I am the co-chair of our pro bono committee, which assists in providing individuals access to the courts who don't have the ability or the money to hire an attorney. So I would be very interested in an appointment to that. And also diversity. As mentioned, I think in the Supreme Court race, I think Southern Illinois, especially the 5th District, incorporates so much rural community, city communities in the Metro East, and a wide variety of individuals who appear and have their cases heard by the appellate court. So I believe diversity and access to the courts are two panels that I would be very interested in serving on.
Thank you. And Justice Bowie, I'll repeat the question. Appellate justices serve on many statewide committees by appointment. Do you have a preference for where you would like to serve in regard to these administrative matters in order to improve the legal system?
Thank you, Professor. I actually do serve on these committees. I believe Judge Smith may serve on a couple as well, but I am a member of the Special Supreme Court Advisory Committee for Justice and Mental Health Planning, and that committee helped promulgate the standards and the application, the certification review process for all of the various problem-solving courts in Illinois. Those were the drug courts, the mental health court, and the veterans courts. I also serve as the co-chairman of its Compliance, Mental Health, and Developmental Disabilities Code Subcommittee, where I helped in writing 2 new Supreme Court rules with that subcommittee, as well as drafting form orders in mental health cases that are now used statewide. I was instrumental in those, and I'm very happy and proud of that work. I am a routine faculty presenter at the Judicial Education Conference. I have done that the last 2 years and this year as well, and I will continue on with that. And as a trial court judge, I was the first judicial circuit mentor for new judges. So I do serve on those. I have just recently been asked to take over the role as the Illinois judicial representative for the Regional Judicial Opioid Initiative. It's RJOI, comprised of 7 Midwestern states to help those persons suffering from opioid addiction and that are in the court system. So I will continue to serve on those committees. I will serve on any other committees that I might be asked to do in the future as well.
Thank you, Justice Bowie. And this next question is sort of a follow-up of what you had just mentioned. There is a statewide move towards specialized courts, such as veterans courts, drug courts, etc. Williamson County has some of these courts. I guess the question is whether downstate counties and circuits can afford them and have adequate social services to support these kinds of specialized courts.
Thank you, Professor. That's a great question. And that was when we were discussing, I've been on that committee now over 10 years, and I am the farthest southern judge on that committee. So I really try to give them the viewpoint from a small county perspective. And the bottom line, it is very difficult for the smaller counties to do a designated drug court or veterans court because they are very time consuming. They are very costly. And, there's a lot of stakeholders involved with the judge and the prosecutor and the defense attorneys and the agencies that are giving them the help, the probation. So it is very difficult. So with Williamson County, since they do have some better resources, they took the lead and created in the First Judicial Circuit, the drug court. And there has been discussion at judges' meetings that once they get that moving forward, once they get that where they can, then there is talk about maybe allowing other defendants from other jurisdictions, other counties in the First Judicial Circuit to take part in that.
Thank you. And Judge Smith, what is your view about these specialized courts, drug courts, et cetera, and whether downstate counties and circuits can afford them and have adequate social services to support them?
Absolutely. Like Justice Bowie said, I wholeheartedly support them. I have been very involved in the local Veterans Treatment Court, and we have assisted other counties such as Clinton County and Bond County who may not have those access to resources. And what we've done is we've had sort of a mutual agreement between these counties where we will bring them into our court. The judge still from the home county still signs the orders, but we assist them with the resources. I think, especially for the veterans treatment courts, Southern Illinois has one of the largest veterans populations in the state. And I believe the legislator found it so important for those veterans treatment courts that they've actually mandated that each judicial circuit have a veterans treatment court. Because for some of you that don't know, especially with National Guardsmen, we get sent away. We're in a foreign land, 17 and 18-year-olds getting shot at. Then we come home, we've got 3 days to out process, and then they're sent back to their civilian career. So what are we seeing? We're now seeing soldiers dealing with DUIs, opioid epidemics, domestic violence. So those courts are so essential for our veterans in Southern Illinois. In addition, I have been very proud to start up 2 of the treatment courts here in Madison County, the Domestic Violence Accountability Court and the Child Support Accountability Court, which actually gets to the root of the problem and stops the recidivism. And so we've really seen great success with these treatment courts. So I wholeheartedly support them. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll stay with you, Judge Smith. What improvements or reforms to the civil or criminal justice system would you like to see?
As far as for the criminal justice system, it kind of goes back to what we just talked about, especially when you're dealing with nonviolent crimes. The Metro East, especially, and I believe Southern Illinois, we've seen a huge impact with the methamphetamines and how it has just decimated families, whether, it doesn't discriminate on race or wealth or, ethnicity or political party. We are dealing with a real big problem with methamphetamines. I also believe that we need to focus on elder justice initiatives. We have a really large booming population. And unfortunately, I think crimes involving the elderly are kind of not as reported high enough. And I believe the judges can be involved in those sorts of educational aspects. As far as the civil justice reforms go, I believe it all goes back to access. And I think we've kind of hit on that where, in some of these small rural towns, you don't have lawyers like you used to anymore. And I believe that the civil justice system should be open, and it shouldn't just be available to those who can afford an attorney. It should be open to everyone. So those are the reforms that I would like to see.
Thank you. Justice Bowie, what improvements or reforms to the civil or criminal justice system would you like to see?
Well, I agree with Judge Smith on her comments. And one of the issues when I was thinking about this question is one of the issues that is the underfunding of the public defenders in these small counties that have to properly represent the defendants in criminal court. In most small counties, there's only one public defender. He doesn't have any support staff, and he or she has a majority of the criminal cases. So they're hard pressed to keep up on a daily basis with the volumes of cases. And that becomes even more issue when the public defender has a jury trial. That requires a lot of time to prepare and then have the trial. So during that time, he or she's unable to meet with their clients. The backlog just keeps going. So trying to get maybe more funding from the state somehow to help maybe get help with another public defender. The technology that we've talked about throughout both sessions tonight, the technology will help that and help the people access the court system a little better. So I think we can use that. As far as the criminal system, or I'm sorry, the civil system, there's a lot of things when you look at different counties. So maybe having some more uniformity within a circuit. So, attorneys and litigants know what they're doing in that particular area. And again, the access to justice is a big issue.
Thank you. Justice Bowie, I'll give you the next question. Are there any ethics reforms you believe that are needed for judges? And if so, what are they?
Well, you heard the Supreme Court candidates talk about the canons of judicial ethics, and those canons are very up to date. They're very comprehensive. And I personally do not believe that any additional reforms are needed at this time because of that. I believe that the state of Illinois has taken a very proactive role in educating its judges by requiring each and every judge in the state to attend the biannual Judicial Education Conference. During that conference, there are sessions on criminal cases, civil cases, family cases, juvenile cases, all the different types of cases. But one of the most important is there are numerous sessions on different ethic issues. And each judge is required to take so many hours during the educational conference that are ethics related. So that is very beneficial. And one of those the big ones right now that is really in discussion when we talk about our education conference is the issue of diversity and implicit bias. And so those are really hot issues that we talk about in the conference.
Thank you. Judge Smith, are there any ethics reforms that you believe are needed for judges?
Well, to echo what Justice Bowie said, I think, the judicial canon of ethics that Illinois has is a very robust canon of ethics. I think what the Supreme Court has done lately by increasing the education requirements on that, I think is great. As far as what I would do to change it, the only addition that I would add, and this is just from personal experience, it's sometimes often difficult where if there's an issue that isn't covered under the canons and you've got somebody that has a question, whether it be one of your associate judges or circuit judges, trying to find a way to get that question answered. The JIB does a great job, but sometimes they're a little difficult to get a hold of. So I don't mean to slight them by any means. But what I would suggest to do, something that we do in the military, is we have, every unit has assigned an ethics officer. And so my proposal would be, have somebody within your circuit, a judge that is kind of the ethics go-to, the ethics expert, and have them assigned to each of the circuits. And then they would be responsible for being very educated and the subject matter expert on those issues. And they would be available for judges to kind of ask. But otherwise, I concur. I think, they've got a really good, strong ethical code and code of canon of judicial ethics there. We just need to get more access to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Smith. And I'll continue with another question along those lines that I had asked previously. Would having received campaign contributions ever cause you to recuse yourself from a case? And if so, when? And how can the public be assured that your decision is not influenced by contributions?
Absolutely. And specifically in this case, in this campaign, I think all of us as judges, we try and keep a Chinese wall up, where we don't really see what's going on with who's giving us money. We kind of know what our budget is, but we don't know the specifics on the eaches and the hows and how much. In particular, in this campaign, I was actually faced with this dilemma, and it was brought to my attention by my campaign treasurer. And we immediately returned the money, the contribution, and then I recused myself from the bench. So how can voters believe that I'll do it? I actually did it. And I think if you did enough search on the Board of Elections, you could probably see what information that was, or what individual contribution that was. But that's something that it's any sort of appearance of impropriety is definitely something that I want to stay away from. So I think that's very important.
Thank you. And Justice Bowie, I'll ask you the same question. Would having received campaign contributions ever cause you to recuse yourself from a particular case? If so, when? And how can the public be assured that rulings are not influenced by contributions to your campaign?
Well, and thank you, Professor. I agree with Judge Smith on what she just said. And, judicial candidates, we are prohibited from personally asking for donations. And I personally do not watch my campaign fund. I'm like Judge Smith. I have a treasurer and he says, we've got this to spend when we're trying to decide what we're doing, if we're going to, buy signs and whatnot. And as Judge Smith alluded to, the contributions are easily seen online. You can go to Illinois Sunshine, I believe. You go to the State Board of Elections. So anybody can look at a candidate's contributions and their expenditures and whatnot. At this juncture, to be completely honest, in my campaign, I have not received a significant amount of donations. So I think at this point, that will assist me in remaining impartial. However, I do agree with Judge Smith. If I did receive a large donation that would have any potential to jeopardize my independence, I would again look to those canons of judicial conduct that require the judge to avoid the appearance of impropriety and make that decision based on a case-by-case analysis and looking what that is.
Thank you. Justice Bowie, I'll continue with you. What efforts do you think the appellate court should take to assure all litigants are treated equitably, regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, or other factors?
Well, in the vast majority of the cases that come before the appellate court, we don't know who those people are, other than a name. Unlike the trial court, where you have a litigant or a defendant sitting in front of you, on the appellate court, we have a case, we have briefs, and in my almost year and a half about I think I can only remember maybe a couple times that an actual litigant has come to court. So what I do is obviously I read the briefs, I look at the law, I follow the law, and the fact, what a person's gender, what their ethnicity is, anything such as that has nothing to do with the way I look at a case, the way I rule on a case, or the way I may vote in a case. On the trial court as well as the appellate court, I've always been fair, I've always been impartial, and that's what I wanted to do on the appellate court. So thank you.
Thank you. Judge Smith, what efforts do you think the appellate court should take to assure all litigants are treated equitably, regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, or other factors?
Thank you, Professor. I think it goes to two issues. Number one, I believe it's training. And I hate to keep hearkening back to my military, but after 25 years, that's kind of what I fall back on. We need to start doing a lot more about implicit bias training, because you may believe that you may not have biases, but it's very, once you start doing this implicit training, you'll understand where your shortcomings may be. So number one, I believe there needs to be additional training as far as that goes. And number two, it goes back to accessibility. As I mentioned before, the appellate court is almost the court of last resort. By the time individuals get to this point, either they've spent a ton of money at the circuit level and they're trying to appeal their case. And oftentimes a lot of individuals can't afford to pay for their appeals. So I think making it easier for individuals, making the rules a little bit more clear, because there's a lot more filing deadlines and rules at the appellate court level than there is necessarily at the trial court level, and making it easier for self-represented litigants to have access to the courts. So those would be my two areas.
Okay. Judge Smith, I believe I'll continue with you. How would you prepare yourself for ruling on cases that present issues novel or unfamiliar to you?
Well, I try and be prepared, because these cases happen all the time in trial court too. I just actually had one the other day that I asked plenty of my colleagues that none of them had actually ruled on this issue, and it was an issue of first impression. I love the study of the law, and I think if in order to be appellate court judge, you're really taking a step back out of the active, calling balls and strikes at 100 miles an hour, and you're taking a step back and you really have to study the law. So for me, it would just be diving in, studying the law, looking at other districts on how they've ruled if this was a novel issue, but really just diving deep and studying the law.
Thank you. And Justice Bowie, I'll ask you the same question. How do you prepare yourself for ruling on cases that present issues novel or unfamiliar to you?
Well, again, I agree with Judge Smith. Luckily for me, spending over 18 years on the trial court and presiding over the various dockets, I do have some experience with most every type of case. However, it is true that a odd case will come through that presents an issue that is novel. And just like Judge Smith, read the briefs very, very thoroughly, do whatever outside research is necessary on my own to delve into that issue, look at what all's out there, and really, get into the issue, spend the time necessary to know when you walk into that oral argument, hopefully where you're going and questions to ask, and have an idea, a better idea about that particular issue.
Thank you, Justice Bowie. I believe this will be our last question before going to closing statements. What has been your greatest accomplishment in your legal career?
Well, the easy answer is being chosen by Justice Carmeier in the Supreme Court to serve on the appellate court. But I believe more importantly, and when my career is over, I hope that when you ask the attorneys that appeared before me, both in the circuit court and the appellate court, that they would tell you that I was fair and impartial in my rulings, that they may not have liked or agreed with everything that I did, all the rulings I made, but the rulings were made based upon the facts in the case and the law. It did not matter what your name was, what law firm you were affiliated with, or what side of the table you sat on, whether you were a plaintiff, defendant, prosecutor, or defense, that everybody received the same treatment in a fair hearing and a fair trial. And I brought that same fairness and impartiality to the appellate court. Both sides deserve a fair trial at both levels, and that I will continue to base my opinions based upon the facts and the law without any consideration of who the parties are, who the attorneys are that represent them, and base it on the Constitution, the law, and the facts of that particular case. Thank you.
Thank you. And Judge Smith, what has been your greatest legal accomplishment in your legal career?
Thank you, Professor. I would like to say it was being elected to circuit judge by overwhelming bipartisan support, but I think it would most likely be my time as a military judge. I was the first female judge, military judge appointed in the entire United States Army National Guard. And part of the reason why I was appointed as the military judge is because as a prosecutor for military sexual assault crimes, if there's a military nexus, then the ball is handed off to us. Civilian authorities kind of don't want to mess with the case. So I have successfully prosecuted. I have never lost a case involving sexually violent persons and child abusers. The problem is prior to 2017, all we could do as the military is just simply kick them out of the military. And there was one in particular case where we had an officer who was sexually assaulted 6 different females over the course of 3 years. And the only thing we could do, because civilian authorities did not want to handle the case, the only thing we could do was prosecute him in the military, and then he was kicked out of the military. It was at that time that I realized we needed a military code of justice. And so in 2017, I was instrumental in drafting legislature, getting it passed through the legislature, a code of military justice, which now allows us, if civilian authorities are no longer want to be involved in the case, that we can actually try these individuals. And if we are successful, they can be sentenced for up to 10 years. And so that's done a great deal for females and males in the military who've been sexually assaulted. So that's by far my greatest accomplishment.
And thank you. And that brings us to the closing statements. And I began the last time with the opening statement with Justice Bowie. This time, Judge Smith, I'll begin with you.
Thank you. Well, I just want to say again, thank you for having us, and thank the voters out there for following us. It's kind of hard, getting 2 minutes to introduce yourself and then a minute to ask all the questions. And I'm sure Justice Bowie will say the same, but feel free to follow me on my Facebook page, Judge Sarah Smith for Appellate Court. Also my website, teamsarahsmith.com, if you want to learn a little bit more about me. And please feel free to ask me any other questions that weren't asked during this forum. And my final thought that I want to put out there, because not only do I want to be your next appellate court judge, but I vowed that I would use my platform and my social media and this campaign to try and promote unity in our community. And I'm going to do that here today. We've just got to look past labels, folks. We've seen how divided this country is, and we have to start looking past the labels, because here in Southern Illinois, we've got a lot more in common than we do in our differences. So I would just ask that from the bottom of my heart, you start loving people more than you hate your politics. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Justice Bowie, your closing statement.
Well, thank you, Professor. And again, just like Judge Smith, I thank you for conducting this forum tonight, giving us this opportunity to get in front of the voters, get our message across. I know I speak for Judge Smith when I say that, we do appreciate this opportunity, especially in light of all of these issues going on. And I want to say thank you to Judge Smith for being here tonight, obviously. If you want to follow ours, it's friendsforjusticebowie.com, Friends for Justice Bowie on Facebook. And the citizens of Southern Illinois deserve a proven, experienced judge hearing these cases. And I've got 20 years experience. I'm asking to make a long-term commitment to keep my impartiality, my independence, my Southern Illinois values, and my experience on the appellate court. And I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes the judicial forum sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Jackson County. Thanks to the participants, Judge Smith, Justice Bowie, Justice Overstreet, and Justice Cates. And a special thanks to the Carbondale Public Library and to Jennifer Robertson, who has acted as the technical advisor for this project. Have a good evening.
Thank you.